Welcome to MotoVida, where every journey is a declaration of freedom. Apparel designed for those who live on two wheels, merging quality, comfort, and style. Wear what you ride and let the world see who you are with MotoVida.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Miguel, aka Mi Motora 36, and this is Armando, and all of you know him as Man Von Drake. Today, I'd like to introduce myself and my company. With Armando, we are MotoVida Apparel, located here in Central Florida. We manufacture and design and print customized motorcycle apparel. Many of you already out there are wearing our shirts. We appreciate all your support. And now we have added a new addition to this whole entire movement that we have. We have decided to go out and interview true racers and motorcycle enthusiasts today. And without further ado, we have a special guest today that we are going to introduce. We are more than humbled to have him here. He brings a vast variety of experience in what he's done in his life riding motorcycles, a father of two beautiful children, and I would like to proudly introduce Bob Moto RZ.
What's going on, everyone? How's it going? Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate
All right.
it.
Well, you know, first, this being our first podcast, I got to say that I am more than humbled. Me and Man Von Drake here, we're talking about you, and we're like, hey, who are we going to bring on this show for the first time to interview somebody true? And you know, I follow you a lot. I'm a big fan. I see that you not only that you ride on the street, you track bikes, and he builds his bikes, takes them apart. His children are involved with motorcycle racing. So we have literally a true motorcycle enthusiast. So we would like to start off by asking you, what got you into motorcycles?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know, like, I didn't start riding until I was older, right? I was in my 20s. I think I was 22 with my first bike, right? So really what got me into it was a buddy got a bike. I was like, dude, you got to get a bike. So I went out and got a bike. So old GXR 600, right? So I got my start on a Gixxer. But yeah, I mean, once I got on that bike though, like I fell in love, right? Within a month, I was putting it on the track. And so that
on the track?
Oh yeah.
In a month?
In a month, yeah.
Wow,
yeah,
in a month.
Badass, man.
Yeah.
That's
like
incredible.
I watched motorcycle racing on TV and I saw the guys like flinging their bikes over, dragging knees, things like that. And I was like, you know, that looks pretty exciting. I've always been an adrenaline junkie, and I've always had like an engineering mindset. And so it like blew my mind how they could defy gravity in some ways, like how they're ripping these bikes around the track.
So you put this vision in your head. You would watch TV and go, I can do that.
Well, I thought like I can try to do that at least. But
So that being said, so when you got your first bike, for us as motorcycle riders, you know, I'm not at the level anywhere near where you guys are at. How do you actually feel when you're on a bike, whether it's personal use or when you're on the track? What does it do for you, for your
it's a
life?
complete Zen state, right? So like it's my way of like disconnecting from all the problems that I'm having, or like, you know, just getting away, right? So when I put the helmet on, when I'm going down the track, whether it's on the road or on a racetrack, right? It's like a Zen state. Like it's blood's pumping, adrenaline's pumping. At the same time, I'm probably the most calm I am in my entire life. Just
On the motorcycle.
On the motorcycle. Like I remember the back straight of Coda doing 175, and I just felt this sense of calm, like just
At 175.
just relaxed, right? And all of a sudden the corner comes up, so now like everything's back up, and you're slamming on the brakes. You're get ready to turn in, but it's just a nirvana state for me. I just love it. It's freedom.
When you're doing that and you're talking about these triple digit speeds that you're talking about, I mean, we're not talking about like 100 miles an hour. We're talking at close to 200. What is the sensation of that? Like, you know, you're riding your bike down I-4 and you're doing 90, but now you're telling me you're doing 175 and you're on a track. What are the parameters of that? How do you feel about that? I mean, when you're doing that, is there a sense of fear? Do you have a little bit of fear that's going through your mind while you're doing that? Or is it just the same as when you're on the street?
I think anytime, like for me at least, I'm on a bike, there's always a sense of fear, right? So it's about me riding is about overcoming that sense of fear, like figuring out like where do I find the courage, right? That intestinal fortitude. But like on a track, there's a lot less fear, I'd say. It's more about focused on like getting technique properly, right? Street riding for me is more defensive, like on a more defensive mindset.
Right.
So there's a lot more fear because I got to worry about road conditions, other cars, other riders, especially if I'm group riding,
People
right?
texting.
Right, whatever the case is, something in the middle of the road. But on a track, you know you're good to go, right?
Right.
So you got a 45-foot wide track, right? There's ambulance there, there's medics there, there's other people on the track who know what they're doing as well too, right? Mm-hmm. So you feel very comfortable, feel very safe. So you're focused solely on your ability, your skill, your limits, and you're pushing yourself.
Okay. Man, you got anything to add?
Add to that is like, I always say, if you not scared, you're not going fast enough.
Right.
So there's always that sense of
So where there's no fear, you just want to go faster.
Not really faster. I think just getting a faster lap time, right? So it could be going faster through a turn. It could be like taking it, braking later. But like, how do you sort of capture those extra additional, right, milliseconds or seconds going through a section of a racetrack, right? So you're always focused on like, how do I improve lap after lap after lap after lap?
And to many of the audiences out there listening, from what I've learned and watched them, this is totally on their dime. They're paying for all of this. They're not sponsored. They're paying. He's paying for all his tires, his fuel. It's a very expensive hobby, and at the same time, it's a huge risk. Before this episode began, I was talking to him, and he was telling me a little bit about your wrecks.
Oh, yeah.
And your battle scars. And, you were telling me about how right now recently MotoGP was showing a lot of scars of all the racers. So do they kind of teach you a lesson? Do you go back on there and go, I don't want to do that to myself again. I just had this plate put in, or I just had these screws put in. How do you feel about it? Or you just go right back out it and go whatever?
Oh, yeah. I think for the most part, you go. So I don't race per se, right? I'll go out there and I do mostly track days. I do racing in smaller club type stuff. But for me, there's definitely a mindset about it, right? So when it was a left-hand crash, my last wreck, right, where I broke my collarbone. So I definitely take my time on lefts. I favor my rights, where most motorcyclists favor left-hand turns. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, I'm still trying to find my limit, push my limit. But yeah, there's definitely some level of like, I don't want to get hurt again. Right. But at the same time, you understand the inherent risk of riding motorcycles. So all right, push yourself.
You get up and do it again?
You get up and do it again, right? Yeah. Just like when I wrecked, like I was on a bike literally the day after, right? On the street, not on the racetrack. But
it's funny that you mentioned that because, when my son was 11, got him a bike. He took forever to learn how to ride a bike, but he got on it and he fell and he hurt himself. He got total fear of that. And I said, Miguel, you got to get right back on it now. You got to get right back on it now, and you got to go back pedaling. And he wouldn't do it. It took me forever to teach him to ride a dirt bike, but he began and he got in there and it's like you said, it's second nature, but he still has that fear of, wrecking. Unlike my youngest son, who's never really wrecked, on his bike. He just gets on it. He just has no fear. He just gets on it, and it's full-blown throttle as fast as he can in my property. And it's just crazy how, to me, the mental state, for myself, when I ride with the groups and I go out riding with groups, I see some friends that I know will go triple-digit speeds, and I'm right behind them. I'm always behind everybody. I'm never really in front of anybody because, coming from a cruiser standpoint of riding motorcycles, I'm used to just doing double-digit speeds,
right.
Not triple-digit speeds. So I have a lot of respect for riders when I see what they do, like particularly you and even Man Von Drake and the things that you do, how you can take a machine like that. And so a lot of people, when they buy a motorcycle, they have no idea what these machines are capable of doing. They just think it's a little key you put in the ignition and you start up and you just cruise and get air. It's more than that. Motorcycles, to me, are an instrument. They all have music built in them. They can sing to you in different manners than other motorcycles can. And when it takes true musicians like you all to get on a bike and show what the capabilities are, I think it's really kind of unique what is done with motorcycles. I don't look at motorcycles like most people do. To me, and probably you and him, they're like art to me. They give me a sense of calm, like you're saying. I relax a lot when I'm around them. It takes me away, it's a getaway for me to be on a bike. But doesn't mean that I have to do what all of you guys do. You guys are taking them to the limits. I'm just humble enough that I have the energy and the power to still get on one and ride one and enjoy it. So my question now is, you have two beautiful kids. And can you tell us a little bit about what you do with them with motorcycles as well?
Oh, yeah. So I've got two kids. My daughter, she's 14. Son's 11. My son's more into motorcycling than she is. She's more into like the drama type stuff. But like with him, he got a late start. So we tried all the ball sports with him. Football, basketball, baseball, all that stuff. And I mean, he enjoyed it, but never really clicked with him with any of those ball sports. Mm-hmm. And so last year I said, you want to try motorcycling? Because he saw me motorcycling. So I took him out to SFL Mini GP, one of their events, and got him on a bike, rented a bike just to see what it was like. And he fell absolutely in love, right? And ever since then, we're there at every weekend event, every track day / race day. And it's fun to watch him improve. Like you were talking about crashing, right? Watching him overcome that initial fear of crashing, like literally out on the racetrack, getting up himself, standing his bike up, kickstarting his bike, and getting right back out there and going, hard again. Like it's just fun to watch, him overcome those fears and sort of, learn how to ride a motorcycle, crazy, but also safe, right? So it's just been great watching him learn.
Awesome.
So while you're there being the father and the teacher to your kids, could you tell our audience out here what would be some tips that you could give out to people that want to get into motorcycling, that want to eventually learn how to ride a bike? Could you give any examples? What would you recommend to them?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is like, don't push yourself, right? Like everyone has different limits. Like you were talking about, like some people ride 170, some people, keep it under 150, right? It's all about the matter of your comfort level and what you want to experience and sort of what risk you're willing to take. Because it's inherently a risky endeavor, right? Ride a motorcycle.
Correct.
So do it at your own pace because you get joy out of it no matter what, right? Like we did a track day one day with like all novice riders. Like we're literally tooling around this racetrack really, really slow. But I had so much fun. I actually enjoyed that in some ways more. Coaching people who've never been on a racetrack, doing 30 miles an hour around a corner, looking back at them just to make sure, hey, do they have the right technique, right? So it's about like like what your company represents. It's about community. It's about sharing sort of this passion with others and getting them to sort of experience things that they probably wouldn't normally experience if they just stayed within their zone.
I believe that there's just so many stories out there that are hidden. I mean, I can be here all day talking to you because you're like an encyclopedia of motorcycle stories. And so does Man Von Drake. Man Von Drake, for many of you that don't know, he is out on the street daily representing MotoVida.
Well, he's a true biker, right?
And he is the epitome of true life on two wheels. I mean, I can say that about myself, but he's on another level. This guy lives and breathes motorcycle riding, and that is what MotoVida represents. We're, yes, we sell apparel. We want you to we want you to represent what you wear, but in the end, it's really about the experience, combining everybody together, talking to people like you, meeting people like you, telling us what you think is, you can give us so much knowledge that a book can't give us. You got a manual when you get, it's funny, you still buy a motorcycle today and they give you a manual. And if you look through the manual, like I bought a Harley recently, and it tells you how you should ride your motorcycle. It really cracks me up when I read it because I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I bet you there are some people out there today that will grab that manual and follow that manual or look at it. And I'm thinking, why would they do that? Now, if I go to Bob and go, Bob, what do you think? No, Miguel, you're standing that bike.
Yeah, I think
wrong.
my manuals are still wrapped in plastic. I don't think I've ever cracked one of those open.
Yeah,
I didn't even know.
So
he's like, what are you guys talking about? It came with a book.
Even when I got my endorsement back in the day, we had a really good lady teaching us. And, we had these Harleys that had like these training wheels on the side.
Right.
But she knew that I could ride and they were one bike short. So I got a regular Sportster to learn on. And, and I'll tell you, when you think you know everything about riding a motorcycle or because you rode one, you don't. That's why my father's always taught me when you don't know something, especially on a motorcycle, shut your mouth and listen to other people. Even if they can acquire bad habits. But, when you talk to somebody like you've had battle scars, you're going to go, hey, man, I've gone on that corner before like that. Just going to let you know, make sure your tire pressure is correct. Make sure you check your bike. So that is what MotoVida Lifestyle Magazine is. We want to bring people like you to tell and educate people to make their experiences better.
Right.
And I don't think there's anything out there that's doing that right now. And again, if I may ask again, for somebody just starting again, I know you were saying, take it easy. Do you have any recommendations, like, when they first get on their bike in the morning or they're going to go ride, what should they do first? What should they check for safety or anything like that? Do you have any?
I don't know. I guess for me, it's second nature for me, right? So it's tough. But like, obviously, with a motorcycle, you always want to make sure your bike's in tip-top shape, right? Make sure the chain tension's in the right place, right? It can't be too tight because the chain will pop, and then all of a sudden, right, you've got a chain wrapped around your left foot or flying down the highway. Tire pressures, that tends not to, affect too often, but like make sure your tire pressures are good. Check that regularly. Obviously, you got gas. Like for me, again, like I'm not too concerned about the safety stuff. Like it's inherently risky. So like
exactly. You take a risk once you get on the bike.
But safety third.
Exactly, safety third, right.
Can you explain that term to us? Because we were talking about that earlier before this started. Explain that to us of the safety third so people get an idea.
Yeah, so safety third was coined by Mike Rowe back in his days when he was doing his show Dirty Jobs. But it was this concept of like, especially around businesses, right? All these businesses who promote this concept of safety first, right? It's really not true, right? It's almost a lie because you're in business not to make your employees safe. You're in business to make money. Second, you're in business to accomplish the mission of your business, right? Whether you're flying people across the country or around the world or, whatever the case is, MotoVida selling T-shirts and creating community. If you really try to focus on safety first, then you're not doing what makes the world go round. And when you put it in your personal life, it's really more about personal accountability, right? That company is not in charge of my safety. I'm in charge of my safety. So I have to understand the risk. I have to understand what I'm getting into, and I personally make a decision on what I'm going to do. So I apply that to my life as well too, and my kids' lives. Like I try to teach them the same thing. Like, go have fun. If you think about safety every single time you're about to do something, you're not going to do that thing, right? And you're going to die with regrets and dreams versus actual experiences and memories.
It could actually instill a little bit more nervousness while you're riding because you're worried about everything.
Yeah, you're worried about all the bad stuff that could happen, right? Yeah. Don't worry about that stuff. Like, accept that as a default, right?
Right.
But learn that stuff so you can prevent that as much as you can. But you're not going to prevent everything.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're bringing on those points because I think when you go to any dealer, you buy a motorcycle, that is a risk you take. You buy a car, yeah, it's a risk still. It's still an automobile, it can wreck. But a motorcycle has a little bit more liability issues. Right. You got two wheels. You got to balance yourself. You don't have a surrounding protective shell around you. So it's more of a different concept than, buying a car and feeling safe on a bike. But you're right. If you're going to get on a motorcycle, you're taking that risk. It's not easy whether you ride a small light bike or a big fat hog, that you're riding. You're going to take that risk. And, I learned to accept it as a young kid. I mean, I've only had one, knock on wood, motorcycle, but I ran my dirt bike into the side of the house.
Man, I've owned 15 bikes and have not crashed too. So what am I doing wrong?
All right, guys, you hear that? This guy's always going to have a bike every other year. No, but I'm very humbled that that you can tell us this information because there's a lot of people that I talk to, and when we're at the dealer and I go to a lot, everybody knows I go to Ducati Sanford a lot, and I'm always at Sky Power Sports. And there's a lot of people that buy motorcycles that have never ridden. In fact, we had a story that I was on a prior podcast, and I had a girl that bought her first motorcycle. She's a waitress at one of the restaurants that I eat at regularly, and hardly any experience. And it's funny, she took your concept. So I said, Sana, you need to be careful. You're getting on a bike. And she goes, well, maybe we can get together and ride together. Well, my schedule is so busy that she waited and waited. The next day I called her. She rode to Daytona. I go, what made you do that? She's like, I just had to do it. I had to take the risk.
Right.
And if I didn't take it, now I feel comfortable. And it's exactly what you're talking about right now. She took the fear factor out of everything and just said, let me try this, and I'm going to get comfortable on my motorcycle. And now she's riding every day.
Right.
She's riding her motorcycle every day, and she's free. She feels so empowered by doing that.
Right.
I try to tell everybody, and a lot of people laugh at me, is that people have no idea until you try it. I even tell my sister when we talk, she's like, why do you love motorcycles so much? It is, to me, again, it's an instrument. It gives so much. You won't understand it until you try it. I tell everybody out there, until you get out there and buy a motorcycle and you try it, it's a sense of empowerment. You feel free. It's nothing like driving a car. People say, oh, I'll drop my convertible top down and it's great. That's great. But it's, to me, and it's my opinion, it's never going to be like riding a motorcycle.
Bitch, please.
Yeah.
Right.
Put your top down.
Yeah.
Come on.
Right.
Well, a lot of people feel that way. Oh, I'm going to go down to the beach. I'm going to drop my top. But to me, like, I have so many memories. I'll never forget. I went with my brother-in-law one day. We were having a really bad weekend. I mean, it was just awful. Right before it started, it was already awful. So we were, he said he didn't get paid that week. Something happened with his payroll at his job. But I said, hey, you know what? Let's just go take a ride. So we literally left our house and we got on our bikes and we decided to go to Titusville, which, to us was a small ride. The next thing, when we get to A1A, we just kept riding.
Right.
And Bob, we are riding, and then we kept riding. And then we look at our fuel gauge and we're like, oh my God, where the hell are we? We landed in Vero Beach. So it was already late at night. I had to call my wife and say, we're going to stay here. Now we're just going to go buy some stuff at Walmart and stay. Where are you guys at? But that is what that motorcycle did to us.
Right.
We got along the coast and we had our music on and we just kept riding, man. And I never forget that moment to this day, just seeing, the sunset go down. It wasn't really hot that day. It was just a day for me to say, this is what I want to do. And I know this, I will never predicate this to my audience or anybody, but there are a lot of people in life, they don't think about their end days. But I want to be on a bike.
Right.
That's where I want to go. I want to do something that I'm enjoying. And that is something to me that has always been passion. I'm not a fast rider. I'm not an experienced rider. Like, I've ridden for 40 years, but I'm just a normal motorcycle rider. But I live and breathe the life of two wheels.
Right.
And that is why I have everybody that's going to be coming on this show to tell people their stories. And if you have anything else that you would like to tell us about experiences or anything like that, we would like to hear.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Armando, because I think there's a difference between me and Armando. Like, I consider myself a biker. I'm sorry, a rider, not a biker, right? Like, I ride my motorcycles. I don't ride in the rain, right? If it's not going to be fun for me, I'm not going to ride the bike. But Armando, like, he's a true biker. Like, it doesn't matter what the condition is, right? He's on his bike literally every single day. So I just want to ask, like, what do you think the difference is between, like, someone like me, a rider, versus you, like a true biker?
There's no difference.
No?
It's all the same feeling, the same passion.
Yeah.
It's just being out there, you and the bike. You forget about all the problems, everything. So to me, I try not to risk it too much.
Right.
Too much.
So what he's saying, you don't care if it rains or whatever, you're going to go on it.
Well, if it's raining, I don't want to go out there. But if I'm out there and start raining,
that's it. You're going to do it.
I don't care.
It's fine, right? You just accepted that it's going to rain, and you'll figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
just take it easy,
And the funny thing is, when I first met Armando, I knew he was a rider and a biker, but he's so involved in the community. I mean, everybody knows him, and he's out there, and it's amazing how people gravitate to him because he's one of them. He can literally blend like a chameleon with all the types of riders, whether it be sport bike riders, cruiser riders, because he had a cruiser before your
I
Ducatis.
started on a cruiser.
He started on a cruiser, so he was life on two wheels. I think we all started on something different than what we have now. Now we're older and we're a little bit more spoiled. But I remember my first bike, and I said it on my first motorcycle was a 1976 Kawasaki KD100. Whoa. That was my first dirt bike. And my first street bike was an '07 Sportster. That's my first bike. And, they're all special to me because I did so many different things. I took pictures with my parents on them, even though they were totally against me riding motorcycles, But I can tell you, getting back to what you're saying about him is he's out there. He's talking about it. Now he tracks with you. He rides every day. He's involved. Not only that, he's working in that industry now. Not only with MotoVida, but he works in the industry around motorcycles. So he is truly the life on two wheels.
I think with you can sense the passion, right? You're just around him. You sense the passion for it's not just the motorcycle too. It's the community of the motorcycle, right? So
correct.
That's, one of the reasons why absolutely love Armando and hang out with Armando.
This is why this company represents me. And I represent the company's MotoVida Life on Two Wheels.
Which stands for Motorcycle Life in Spanish, and that's what we gave it.
It is what it is. Like, that's perfect.
Right. But we are looking forward to having you again on this show. And maybe we can insert some videos of stuff that you do. We're going to have, if you all check us out on our MotoVida Apparel on Instagram, you're going to see a clip of Bob and some photos and the things that he does. And I encourage you all to keep following him because he truly is to us life on two wheels.
I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
What are your goals? Are you going to be riding, like competing, or are you just going to keep tracking?
So it is a bucket list of mine to actually compete in a race, like obviously amateur. So last year I got my CCS race license through ASRA.
Okay.
This year, because the races are up north, like you were talking earlier, it's an expensive hobby. I don't think I'll do it this year, but I think next year I'll try to sort of figure out how to make that investment and sort of actually enter a couple races next year, at that level, right? On the big
how's
bikes.
that experience there when you going on the track to get the license and everything?
Yeah.
Is it like a normal experience, or
I think it's for me,
different?
it's normal, like a track riding, right? There's a little bit different, right? Because you're focused now on being competitive versus just going out there and having fun, right? But even on a track day, you're competitive. Like you find someone who's about the same speed, you're like, I can beat this guy, or how do I get as fast as this guy? But it's definitely right. The competitive aspect really comes into play. Like I do small races on a little 125 here and there. And it's just so much more different, right? The mindset, you're at the start, red light goes off, and now you're gunning to get in front. Right? So it's a completely different mindset.
That's awesome.
But the calmness, it's not as calm as it is on a track day, right? I would say it's just as enjoyable, but it's a different mindset, right? You're trying to figure out how do I get as fast as I can around that corner so I can beat that guy in front of me. So it's a different mindset, but it's still just as fun.
One thing that we didn't interject here in this podcast was that before we had a long talk before this podcast, and one thing that blew me away is that you took a hiatus from riding motorcycles.
Yeah.
And I want you to really tell the audience before we end this podcast, which that story has really blown me away. So I'm going to let you talk about that because I'm still in shock with that.
Yeah.
And how you just said, I got right back on it and went those kind of speeds. So tell us a little bit about this hiatus you had.
Yeah, so I started in my 20s. I think 22 was my first bike. And then I rode for about 5-7 years, like between street and track. In that first sort of, in my 20s, I did track for, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years maybe. And then I got married, had kids. And it's not that I was worried about dying. I just wanted to spend my time with my kids, right? So on the weekends, instead of riding the bikes, I'd go out and hang out with my kids, like out in the yard, do their sports, things like that. So like I always had bikes in the garage until, I don't know, kids were like, daughter was like 5 or 6, and I finally got rid of the bikes because they were just bugging me knowing I had like 3 bikes in the garage that never got ridden. And then now my kids were older. The fall 2 years ago, right? So about a year and a half ago, I was like, you know what? I'm going to put my bike on the track. 2 years ago, I bought a bike, rode on the street for about 6 months. So you know what? I'm putting back on the track. So 46 years old, get on the racetrack and ripping it up with the little kids. It was fun.
I hope the audience understands it. So you took a hiatus.
Yeah.
You go and buy a
break.
motorcycle. You just don't go out and ride. You go out and race.
Oh, yeah.
And like nothing. It's like you said, you never forget. It was
it's
hard
like
for
riding
me,
a bicycle.
It was hard for me to swallow that because one thing is you didn't ride for 20 years. You get on a motorcycle, you turn it on, you ride, you have to get adjusted. You went and raced and do triple digit speeds. That's something that I just can't see that you just never forget and pick up. And it's sort of like saying a retired race car driver, like Richard Petty coming out of retirement and going around Talladega at 200 miles an hour.
Yeah, I think for some people it's like that's just how they live their life, right? They're just used to things like that. I mean, there are some things I forgot, like tire pressure. I completely forgot what tire pressure to run. So I'm asking everybody, like, hey, what do I run? What tire pressures? Like, what about my sag on the suspension? Things like that. So there's some of the things I forgot, like the core metrics. But like when it comes to getting on the bike, putting a helmet on and going around a track, like you remember that stuff. You remember
and
how to lean
you
your
weren't nervous
body.
a bit, Bob, at all, getting back on there, doing that?
I would think I was too excited to be nervous because it had been
Really?
20 years. Yeah.
Wow.
And what was cool was like that track, that first track I was on after 20 years was the last track I was on when I took my hiatus, right? So it was like a lot of memories. But it was also like literally the same pavement, the same employees. It was the same environment, right? So it was like being at home again.
That is an incredible story because that's something that I've never heard. I've heard people saying, I haven't ridden a motorcycle in 10 years.
Right.
And, they get back on it and they ride it and I experience it. But to tell me that you got back on, you're racing, you're doing triple digit speeds. And then again, people don't know, I mentioned it earlier, you work on your bikes, you take them apart to the frame. He does everything. It's like a one-stop shop with him with motorcycles,
Right.
I work on my bikes too, but he's on another level. This is frame, everything coming off. It's insane. And you recently just picked up a vintage bike, right?
Yeah, it was originally my dream bike when I was in my 20s, a Ducati 748. So it's a 98 748, and I found that like it wasn't in the greatest shape, so I had to take it apart and do a bit of a restore, like all the way down to bolts, like reshining bolts and things like that. But
And I must say,
How's it coming along?
It's good. Yeah, so it's running now. I just ordered the clutch. Bodywork just got ordered. So hopefully in 2 weeks the bike will be on the road. So maybe that'll be my birthday ride on the 748.
Nice.
Awesome. And that's the passion of having a lifestyle on two wheels. You have a motorcycle. It's not just about riding it. It's doing things to it, accessorizing it. The clothes you wear, everything. Believe it or not, motorcycling is a culture. It really is.
Yep.
You actually can live your life by the way motorcycle life is. I have, and many people. And that is, again, the reason that I wanted to do something like this. Yes, the apparel is great, but I want people, again, to represent what they wear. Go out there and show, how proud you are of what you ride, not just because of our name, but that you're a true motorcycle enthusiast. And again, we are very humbled again to have you here.
Likewise. Thank
and
you.
We would like for you to come back out here. And to all the audience members out there, we want to thank you again for our first podcast at MotoVida Apparel. Also, please follow us on Instagram, MotoVida Apparel. We're on Facebook as well. And if you want to order any of our shirts or apparel, we're on motovida.net. We want to thank you. God bless all of you. And remember, it's not riding a motorcycle. It's life on two wheels.
Rock and roll.
Ride safe.